Hey guys, so we got quite the episode to talk about with One Piece. So yeah, just getting right into it. We get the formal introduction to Oden's two swords, the Meito Enma, which from Zoro is going to wield now, and the Ame no Habakiri, which is in the possession of Momonosuke, and and there's so obviously just with these two swords, there's a lot to talk about, especially with the Meito Enma alone. But for right now, the big things that stand out are just the fact that we got in is just the fact that we got introduced to both swords in this episode at all. Pretty much solidifies in my mind that both Enma and Habakiri are going to both play major roles in defeating Kaido, especially with the parallels in their names that one cuts heaven while the other rends the underworld. Just from those translations of their names alone, it kind of just kind of feels like that both swords are going to have a part to play in Kaido's overall defeat, and it's laying the groundwork for that. The thing is, I'm kind of slow, so it took me quite a while, but I think I know who's basically going to end up wielding who's going to wield Habakiri, and spoiler, it's not going to be Momonosuke, despite it being in his possession. Again, it's one of those where it's only now that I'm at the point where the manga is that I'm finally realizing who's going to wield that second blade, and now. Now, obviously, the bigger question, though, is what those two swords can actually do. Because being able to rend hell and splitting heaven aren't exactly great power descriptors. However, just from knowing their names, it gives us a bit of a clue. It gives us a bit of clues as to what they can do. Uh, like, and this also kind of more or less says, and like, just from the names alone, we can kind of get a feeling of what these two swords are capable of. For instance, with Enma, just from the its translation of being the sword that can pretty much rend the underworld, that is more than likely going to be the sword that basically cuts through Kaido's defenses, or in this case, his haki. Whereas whereas Habakiri, that's going to be a sword which just from its name of being the sword that splits the heavens, that'll be the sword that will deliver the crippling blow. Like it's not going to like defeat. It's not going to be the one that defeats Kaido, but I think it will land a major crippling slash on his physical body and allow and weaken him greatly, I think. Now, obviously, as far as where Luffy fits into all this, he still will be the one in order to deliver the finishing blow that defeats Kaido. Don't get me wrong, but with this episode, it more or less puts Zoro and this other mysterious person on the board as key pieces in order to reach that final moment where Luffy like actually defeats Kaido. Like it's going to be it's one of those where at this point it's going to be impossible in order for Luffy to actually defeat Kaido defeat Kaido without the help of Zoro. Like it's kind of inevitable that Zoro is the one to help him, I think, at this point. um Also, I really like the tension that was built up in the scene between Zoro and Hiyori when she's basically pleading with him in order to turn Shusui, because it emphasizes just how much of an importance that single sword means to Wano. Like Wano is willing to part with any other sword as long as Shusui remains in Wano, because just the legacy of that sword alone is what protects them, and that's one of those scenes I like more here than in the manga. And it's just purely from a technical standpoint, because little things like voice acting and soundtrack add so much more weight to the emotion, as well as a layer of tension in just how desperate that you can see. Even though Hiyori is putting on a brave face during her conversation with Zoro, you can tell behind that confidence and firm and holding her ground, she kind of is desperate in order to get Zoro to agree. Like I could have done like you can tell that Hiyori is just wants to say, please leave the sword here. Like it shows how desperate she is in order to regain, like in order for one to regain like pretty much some manner of hope and protection back. Um, Now, I will admit I could have done without the brief flashback of for Bark, mind you, but it's a small anime nitpick. I'm not gonna harp on it. After that scene though, we basically cut back to and Law having defeated Hawkins, and it's here where we learn the details of what happened after Kid and Hawkins had come face to face with Kaido, and just knowing that Hawkins' cards gave him no no chance of even escaping. Like obviously no chance of defeat was kind of already in the cards, but it's like the fact that he had no chance of escaping kind of once again reinforces that Kaido isn't just the king of beasts for nothing, but he's a genuine monster. Also, just knowing that Apu lured them into a lured both Hawkins and Kid into a trap really reminds me why that fucker has annoyed me with the latest chapters, and it makes me appreciate even more as to what's happened to him now. So yeah, Apu, go fuck yourself, bro. That's all I'm going to say. Um, I suppose the biggest problem though that this episode had, if I'm allowed to, that I will say, I think the biggest episode this episode probably had is that it well it's one of those episodes where pacing wise it wasn't terrible, but at the same time it was just fine. And I think a large part of that comes from the fact that the comes from a large fact that the opening the opening preview it was actually kind of a very weird preview because it's one of those where obviously obviously like all other previews it was extended, but this one kind of extended the preview was kind of extended in some weird places here and there, but it's one of those where you expect it already to be kind of long, but here it was odd in some ways, and that only added to the kind of weird pacing that this episode had in place as well. Like again, it's not bad pacing, but it is a little weird in places. I'm not gonna lie. Um, uh, of course, even though Hawkins got pretty much defeated by Law, Hawkins also has a very dark premonition that basically Law's alliance with Luffy is destined to crumble. And the thing is, he's not wrong. I don't think here's the thing. The in terms of in like this is something that is kind of being built up or has been built up ever since Dressrosa. But the thing is, it's one of those things that's not necessarily going to happen in this arc, but it will still happen and probably be the subject and the and what and from here on forward, let's just say the whole dynamics between Luffy and Law are more than likely going to be strained. But it's not going to happen in this arc, but definitely in future arcs, that strain is going to build up over time. And and the reason why as to whether this is going to happen at all was actually laid out in the Zoe arc. You in order to understand what's probably going to cause this rift, you just have to remember as to what pretty much as to what pretty much was too much as to pretty much what pretty much Inuarashi had warned about with Robin, and there's pretty much your answer. Robin is gonna. I'm probably already saying too much that I already shouldn't, but Robin is kind of gonna be the key as to what causes this rift. I won't give away the juicy details that pertain to this. All I will say is the groundwork's been laid much more clear now in the manga as to how that whole thing's gonna play out. And yeah, aside from that, we get a whole montage of everyone preparing for the raid, and obviously the fact that Big Mom and Kaido have formed an alliance is definitely a hitch in the plan, and even more so that Kaido's got a group of mysterious giants known as the Numbers on his side. However, despite that, everything's going pretty good, right? Yeah, sure, except what if I were to tell you that the alliance of Big Mom and Kaido isn't even the biggest wrench thrown into this, and it's kind of an interesting dynamic looking back, how their greatest foe is actually closer than for the alliance and for Kinemon. Their greatest foe is actually closer than they think, but so is Denjiro, the greatest ally. So it's like it's an interesting dynamic how pretty much both these dueling sides, the person who's going to throw the biggest wrench in there, who's going to throw the biggest wrench in the rebellion, and Denjiro, the one who's going to save it, are all kind of very close by right now. So yeah, but yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and on Crunchyroll. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.